Have you ever stopped to think about why your company is set up the way it is? Why your boss acts a certain way or why there's an org chart at all? Well, it turns out the blueprint for your entire work life was probably written over 100 years ago. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on that invisible architecture. It all really boils down to this one huge question. How do you take a big group of people, all with their own ideas and motivations, and get them to work together without everything falling apart? How do you turn that potential chaos into a smooth, efficient operation? The answers that some brilliant minds came up with a century ago are, believe it or not, still running the show today. So, picture this. It's the Industrial Revolution. Suddenly, you've got these massive factories and companies popping up. Instead of a few people in a workshop, you have hundreds, maybe even thousands of employees under one roof. And that created a brand new problem nobody had really solved before. How in the world do you actually manage all of that? Back then, the common thinking was pretty simple. Some people are just born leaders, and everyone else is meant to follow. That's just how it was. But as companies got bigger and more complex, that idea just didn't cut it anymore. It wasn't scalable. They needed a system. They needed to turn management from a born-with-it skill into an actual science. And that brings us to our first major breakthrough. It came from a pretty unexpected place, actually. A French mining engineer looked at the chaos of a struggling company and thought, hey, we can build a blueprint for this. We can engineer a better way to manage. So let's talk about this guy, Henri Fayol. He's often called the father of modern management, and for good reason. As he worked his way up the ladder from a hands-on engineer to the top director, he had this huge aha moment. He realized that knowing how to mine coal wasn't nearly as important as knowing how to organize the miners. The management skill, he argued, was the real key to success. And look, this wasn't just some theory he cooked up in an office. When Fayol became the director, his company was on the brink of failure. He spent the next 30 years applying his principles, and when he retired, the company was financially rock solid. He didn't just talk the talk, he proved his ideas worked in the real world. Now, Fayol laid out 14 principles in total, which is a lot to remember. But you can really boil them all down to three main ideas. First, you need a clear structure. Think org charts and job descriptions, so everyone knows who does what. Second, you need clear lines of authority, so it's obvious who's in charge. And third, you gotta focus on your people, things like fairness and team spirit. And one of his principles is so simple but so powerful: unity of command. Basically, every employee should have only one boss. That's it. To him, having two bosses giving you orders was a guaranteed recipe for confusion and chaos. And I mean, if you've ever been caught between two managers telling you to do different things, you know exactly what he was talking about.
Okay, so Fayol gave us the blueprint for the organization, the structure, the what. But that's only half the story, right? What about the actual people working inside that structure? Their minds, their motivations? Well, that's where our next thinker, Douglas McGregor, comes in and completely changes the conversation.
McGregor wrote this game-changing book in 1960, and his big idea was that every single manager has a set of deep-seated, often unconscious, beliefs about what makes people tick. And those core assumptions, he argued, dictate everything about how they manage. He basically split the world of management in two. On one side, you have Theory X. This is the belief that deep down, people are lazy, they hate work, and you need to watch them like a hawk or they'll do nothing. On the other side, you've got Theory Y. This is the belief that people are naturally creative, they enjoy a challenge, and they want to do a good job. Two totally different views of human nature. And this is where the rubber really meets the road. If you're a Theory X manager, you're going to micromanage. You'll create a culture based on control and maybe even a little bit of fear. But if you're a Theory Y manager, you're going to empower your team. You'll build a culture based on trust, partnership, and helping people feel a sense of accomplishment. It's the difference between a watchdog and a coach. Okay, so this might sound a little academic, right? Theory X, Theory Y, but I promise you, you see this stuff in action every single day. Let's look at how these two theories show up in the real world. You sometimes hear stories about certain companies having these really high-pressure cultures. Ford has faced criticism for environments like this in the past. When a company's culture is all about tight control, intense monitoring, and super rigid performance metrics, that's a classic Theory X mindset at play. The underlying assumption is, if we don't constantly check on you, you won't perform. Now, for the flip side, let's talk about Google. They had this legendary policy called 20% time, where they basically told their engineers to spend a full day every week working on whatever project they found interesting. That is pure theory Y. It's a massive bet on trust, autonomy, and the belief that your people are brilliant and motivated. And that bet? It paid off big time, giving us things like Gmail and AdSense. Okay, let's make this personal for a second. Just think back on your own career. Have you ever had a boss who just trusted you, gave you a goal, and got out of your way? That's a theory Y manager. Or have you had the one who hovered over your shoulder, questioning every little thing you did? Total theory X. You've lived these theories, probably without even knowing their names. So what's the big takeaway here? Why are we even talking about these ideas from the early and mid-20th century? Because here's the secret. They aren't just history. They are the invisible operating system that's running pretty much every modern workplace trend you can think of. So if you're a manager or you want to become one, understanding this stuff is absolutely crucial. It really gives you a roadmap. Step one is just to be honest with yourself. What are your core beliefs? Are you more X or Y? From there, you can learn to adapt, to consciously build a culture of trust, and even use modern tools to really understand what drives your people. I mean, just think about all the big buzzwords in the corporate world right now. Remote work? That is impossible without theory Y levels of trust. Diversity and inclusion? That's built on the theory Y belief that everyone has unique value to contribute. Employee wellness programs? That comes straight out of the theory Y playbook of caring about employee motivation and satisfaction. It's all connected. And it's wild when you think about it. That basic org chart at your company, the different departments, the layers of management, the chain of command, that's not new. That's Henri Fayol's blueprint from over a century ago, still shaping how we get work done today. So, I'll leave you with this question. When you go to work tomorrow, take a look around and ask yourself, is this place designed for cogs in a machine, or is it designed for creative, thinking human beings? Is it built on a foundation of control or a foundation of trust? The answer to that question tells you everything you need to know about your workplace.